Idiocracy is a movie that you may have heard of, but you maybe haven't seen it. It's a movie from Mike Judge, who is most known for animated shows such as Beavis and Butthead and King of the Hill, and the movie Office Space. After a movie based on Beavis and Butthead and then Office Space, Judge announced that he'd like to do a movie that he described very simply about a guy who is an average dumbass being transported to the future where humanity was so dumbed down that he is now the smartest person in the world. I remember wondering whatever happened to that project many years later and finding out that it was this film which did not get major distribution despite great reviews from critic pre-screening. The studio refused to release it in very many theaters and it sort of came and went. So what we have here is a diamond in the rough type of film that seems like it was almost intentionally buried, possibly because it's not another Beavis and Butthead style comedy. Despite the multitude of fart and dick jokes, it has a lot of very valid things to say, some of them about the entertainment industry. As it becomes harder and harder to silence stuff like this, and as we see looking around us how the film may be exaggerated but is coming from a realistic standpoint, this movie is not only just very funny, but prescient and possibly important. The main characters are Joe and Rita. He's a depressingly average career army guy who prefers the detail of watching over the army library that no one ever comes to and just sits on his ass watching trashy TV. He's not bright, he comes off as lazy and unmotivated, but is generally speaking a good guy. Rita is a prostitute who is clearly lacking several important brain cells, but also is not a total moron, as she is savvy enough to move the plot forward most of the time and is actually kind of fun to muse over which of them is dumber. For example, Rita lies and says that she's an artist, but she's such a bad liar and makes it super obvious that she's a prostitute, but Joe is fooled throughout the entire movie. But then again, she's convinced her pimp is still after her even after being frozen and waking up 500 years in the future, so maybe they're both equally dumb. But 500 years into the future, where the restaurant Fuddruckers has morphed into Buttfuckers, the U.S. government is sponsored by Carl's Jr., and they water plants with a sports drink, leading to a Dust Bowl famine. These two numbskulls become the smartest people in the country, perhaps the world. At first, the anti-intellectualism of the future ensures that they're just mocked and derided, but eventually they're looked to solve all of the world's problems, which is something of a challenge because they're average at best. Though when they do manage to figure out how to end the famine, it creates more issues, and the people of the time are too stupid, too impatient, and most of all, too unwilling to listen to reason, which leads to Joe being arrested and chased around by a monster truck shaped like a dildo, because that's how the justice system works in the future. The film is full of sight gags which go from the extreme low brow, such as one guy getting constantly hit in the nuts, to clever, such as television being so bombarded with internet-style ads that it looks like trying to browse on your grandma's laptop when she's installed 40 toolbars and a bonsai buddy. Even without the ability to think critically, the denizens of the future are also super lazy and unmotivated, which is played off well, as this is how Joe is introduced, as an extremely unmotivated guy who just wants to sit on his ass and eventually collect a pension. But when faced with a future made up of more extreme versions of himself, he's forced to find the motivation to try to change the world. The best part of the movie, however, is the socio-political commentary. It's not hard to see how we could live in a world like this in 500 years, especially since in just the 10 years since the movie's release, we've made strides towards making some of the things in the film's future, which seem ridiculous in 2006, now they're already a thing. Like, for example, the news channel with dim-witted models reading headlines. I mean, that's a thing. That already exists. The standardized, homogeneous healthcare with doctors relying on computers to diagnose for them. The celebrity president who makes wild populist promises that he can't keep. Police whose only answer to any conflict is to shoot bullets at it until it explodes, and then continue to shoot bullets at it. This isn't a dystopian future. This is what you see on the evening news. It's absolutely hilarious and should absolutely scare the living daylights out of you. 10 out of 10.